Welcome to the Tony Gaskin Show, best-selling author, celebrity life coach, and international speaker. The purpose of this show is to bring you motivation, inspiration, and education in the areas of life, love, and business. Thank you for joining me. Now let's get started. Hey, Tony Gaskins here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Talks with Tony. Got a letter from a young lady and it says, I'm writing in because I am engaged to be married. And my fiance and I got into an argument because he asked me to do something and I said no. What happened was I was dumping my email and found an email I sent him 3 years ago during a time when we were having an argument. Instead of deleting it, which is what I should have done, I told him about it and he asked me to send it to him so he could see it. And I did. So the next day, after I sent it, he decided that he wanted me to read it to him instead of waiting to receive it. And I said no because I had already sent it to him. I understand that it was a small thing and I could have or should have read it, but I didn't want to because I had already sent it to him and felt he should have just been patient and waited to receive it. He didn't like that. We argued over me not doing it for a couple of days, which I realized was petty and childish. And it got real bad, and he almost broke up with me and called off the wedding. He felt since it was such a small thing, and it was, that I should have just done it. And I believe that since it was such a small thing, and it was, he shouldn't have gotten so upset over it. We have since reconciled, but he believes that spouses should never tell each other no, since we hear no out in the world, and said he would never tell me no, and I just don't agree with that. I feel like that is controlling, and it makes me not want to be in a relationship with him anymore because I feel like I'm at his beck and call, and if I say no, it's going to be an argument. Am I overreacting? Please, what are your thoughts? Thank you for your help. This sounds simple, but this could be one of the most complicated emails I've ever received. And when you think about it, I mean, it does sound very, very, very petty. But what is clear here is that you all are in a power struggle, and a relationship cannot succeed if you're in a power struggle. When I was young, my cousin said to me, I mean, we were 9 or 10 years old, so I know it came from his dad, and I think I've said this on the show before. He said a relationship is not 50-50. A relationship is 51-49 because at some time, somebody has to be the bigger person. And this is a clear case of that wisdom that I received as a young lad. This is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And not just talking about, your situation. I mean, in relationships, this is the type of stuff. The good book says the small fox that spoils the vine. This type of stuff is one little riff that happens that should not have happened, that should have been avoided. And then it leads to another issue and another issue and another issue. And the issues get bigger and bigger and bigger. So here, I would have to say that if I sent my wife an email and she said, well, just read it to me. But I didn't want to read it to her because I would rather her read it, have to read it, process it, feel it, think about it on her own, be able to respond to it afterwards. And she said, read it to me. And I said, no, I'm not going to read it to you. Just wait till you get it. She would have been like, okay, cool. I'll check my email. And If it was the other way around, I would have been like, okay, cool. All right, fine. I'll check my email. And that would have been the end of it. So what it sounds like is the two of you are, butting heads. You might be too much alike. You might be too much alike, and y'all have to have a very real conversation. And you will actually have to take the time and sit down and go down a list and say in this list, what all things do you think I can't say no to? Because there is a lot of no's in relationships. Because it's going to be a lot of nights that he wants to be intimate, but you don't want to be intimate. It's going to be sometimes that you physically should not be intimate because it's your time of the month. There's going to be times you got a bad migraine. There's going to be times that your back is hurting, your hip is hurting. And if he doesn't believe you should say no, that's going to cause a huge problem. And a man would want to be intimate way more than he would want an email read. So if he gets mad over you not wanting to read an email that you've already sent him, then when a real issue comes up, because there's also a no that needs to be said to going to the strip club. There's also a no that needs to be said to a threesome. There's also a no that needs to be said of him laying on the couch and not working and you paying all the bills. There's also a no that needs to be said of him yelling at you, him cursing at you, him putting hands on you. So there's a lot of no's that will have to be said in a relationship. No is a part of life, and that is a human right. So no, he shouldn't have gotten mad over you not wanting to read the email. And I'm also wondering, I'm like, did you really mean email? Because you said you emailed him today, and then y'all talked about it tomorrow, and then the next day, and then he said, well, instead of waiting for it, just read it to me. I'm guessing he didn't have, y'all were talking. So were you on the phone? If you was in person, where was his phone? Email is transmitted in 0.5 seconds. So I was kind of confused about that. I'm like, why couldn't he just go open his email? What is he doing? So I don't know. The man in prison, he on the base, in the Army, and he can talk on the little phone on the wall, but don't have access to a computer. So it sounds like it had to be something like that you didn't really go into. But it is, like you said, petty and childish. But what it shows is that you're used to getting your way. He's used to getting his way. And that is a recipe for disaster. And that's what happened in the first 2 years of marriage with my wife and I. And had not we learned that you have to sidestep power struggles, and sometimes you got to be the bigger person and not everything's going to go your way. If we had not learned that in the first 2 years of marriage, we would not have just celebrated 11 years of marriage. So if y'all want to make this thing work, y'all are going to have to identify what really matters. What really matters? What's a big deal? What's not a big deal? You also have to learn how to get along. You got to learn relationship etiquette. You have to learn what you should and shouldn't be doing in love and relationships. It all started with you bringing up a 3-year-old email. That should have never been brought up. When you move on from the past, leave the past where it is. So this argument is actually your fault because you brought up something that was 3 years old. Imagine going to someone that has been, a dead horse that has been dead for 3 years and trying to wake it up and bring it back to life. A lot of times we don't think about that when we think about issues, when we think about problems, when we think about arguments. Imagine how that would look going to something that has been deceased for 3 years and trying to bring it back to life. That's what you did with that email. And that right there, and it's probably honestly a part of the reason why he said read it, because he could have waited to get it, but he knew by asking you to read it would make it awkward. You wouldn't want to do it because it's not your personality. You'd rather him read it. You're not that confrontational because it's no big deal with you reading it, even though you had already sent it. You could have easily read it, but he knew your personality would object to it. This would cause a current argument. This would blow up and escalate this current argument. This will help him escape that old argument that he obviously never gave you clarity for, and that's why you brought it back up. So all of this went into play here, and this all what happened because you kicking a dead horse. And so I want you to think about that and realize, to everybody listen, this is how relationships work. You have to learn how to be a woman in a relationship, how to be a man in a relationship, how to be interdependent, how to work together, speak to one another, deal with one another, know what matters, what doesn't matter, what's important, what's not important, and operate from a place of love and peace and happiness so you can avoid the power struggles and these petty arguments that cause a rift in a relationship that ruins something that could have been an amazing situation. So, hey, think about that. Make sure you slide on over to TonyGaskinsAcademy.com and get the Real Love University, because that is really going to go in depth and help you get the knowledge about love and relationships and yourself that you need. Again, that's TonyGaskinsAcademy.com. Thank you so much. If you have a question, please send it in to inbox@TonyGaskins.com. And I will hope to be able to get to your question and answer it live on the podcast. God bless you. We'll talk soon.